In this little conversation, I thought the next direction to go might be toward family and belonging. I had the benefit of growing up in an intact, loving marriage with parents who did what they said they would do and who raised me with reasonable boundaries. The rules of our house were always ones that made sense. So I grew up in a well-ordered environment. I had brothers and sisters and remember being taught really young that I had a family on earth that was all around me and obvious, but I also had a family in heaven. I had another family. I had a spirit family that I belonged to, something much larger than just the 7 of us who lived in our house. We had pictures of the other family in our house. I had images of Mother Mary and was told that she was Jesus' mother, and that Jesus is my brother, just like my brothers David and Mike. Jesus was my brother in a different way, but still my brother. Mary was mother to me, kind of like my mom on this earth, but in a different way. I belonged to more than one unit. I had a family on earth and a family in heaven. I thought of that as really standard Catholic and Christian catechesis. I mean, it's in every little kid textbook. I thought everybody knew this. I often speak to Catholic groups of people my age and older. They're the ones who have the leisure to show up if you're coming to a church and offer something special and extra. A lot of younger people are still busy building their careers or raising their kids and aren't apt to be at extra stuff at night or on the weekend. Anyway, I found that a lot of people who were raised in intact Catholic homes, they really didn't get that very strongly. They knew that Mary was, something special and important, Queen of Angels or Queen of Heaven. Sometimes in little statues, Mary is standing on the earth like she's in charge of the whole thing. A lot of people had an idea of Mary as being remote and other, so that you couldn't touch her. She was some sort of delicate, pristine figurine. I got some of that, but I also understood that, no, I know what a mother is, and if you say Mary's my mother, well then okay, she's my mother. That meant that she would know me. She paid attention to me. She knew what I liked and what I didn't like. She didn't assume that I was just like every other little kid because a mother knows better than that. A good mother doesn't treat a child like this child is a generic child. A mother learns every little nuance of the one who's been entrusted to her care. So I assumed that Mary, if she's my mother, she would know me in a way that was particular and attentive. Even as a child, I could go to her and ask for help with things or speak to her about anything I wanted to. Now, I grew up in Texas, where a lot of Christians are of different denominations. Sometimes they've been told that any kind of prayer with the saints is idolatrous or wrong in some way. Well, I also knew that because I had playmates who were from these churches where they were taught that. But I knew my own truth. I knew I wasn't being idolatrous. I was just talking to my spiritual mother, that's all. And so, I understood early on that people argue and disagree and think differently about many different things, including religious ones. So that's the way it was. I had a spiritual mother, and I knew that. I knew that I had a Father in heaven who also was my creator and had an intricate knowledge of me because he built me and knew everything about me and was interested in me. I didn't just fall off some assembly line, and I wasn't just like everybody else. Of course, I shared with every other human traits that are common to being human. But I also knew that I was distinct and precious. I was taught that God looked at everybody that way. For me, if I started assuming that people were no big deal, I had an inner voice that would say, check your work, start again, rethink, respect. Look at them again and look for the good that you missed the first time. I learned that if people behaved badly toward you and only showed you negative behavior, it was really easy to just assume that's all that person is. No, try to be respectful even if people treat you with disrespect or dismiss you as not worth looking at. Anyway, I like that. But I bring that up because if you didn't grow up with some sense of having cosmic parents or a kind of universal belonging, try it on now if you want. You can borrow that from me, it's available. Try that on. Sit in stillness, ask that question however you do it, whatever your spiritual practice is. Do I really belong to a group larger than my family? Do I really belong to a universal family? And then, of course, family can be fraught with all kinds of negative drama depending upon your family of origin. Even though my parents' marriage was loving, I never went without a meal and was college educated at their expense. It wasn't all roses in my family's life either. We had plenty of difficulties. In my young adulthood, I had to go through struggles connected to my life growing up. I don't think anybody gets through the transition from birth to adulthood without some of that. But anyway, ask yourself that question. Do I belong? Is there a family of humankind? Is there a defined family that I belong to? I believe that answer is yes. Sit with that question. Be still and ask the truest, deepest part of you, is it true that I have this other spirit family that I belong to? Is that true? I'm hoping you'll hear your own inner yes. Try that if you want. It's simple and it won't cost you a thing. One thing that comes up a fair amount, because I deal with all this afterlife business, is the angels, or what some call spirit guides. Cosmos is just another word for universe. A cosmology is a way of understanding the universe. And I was given a good Catholic cosmology. That's a good shorthand way to try to understand, even as a child, the complex world we live in. I was taught that I'm a person, and I'm a human person. God is also a person, a divine person. In fact, God is three persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, three persons in one God. So there was already kind of a family of God, of persons, and then between humans and God is another level of persons that we call the angels. Were you ever in a classroom that had an evolutionary chart, a line where on one end was an amoeba, a single-celled living thing, and then there's kind of this upward curve showing insects and rodents and smaller animals, and then further up the chain were larger animals, and then at the top of this upsweep, higher primates, and finally humans? Well, I was in classrooms like that, but I was also raised in Catholic schools most of the time. even though that was the world we could see, the material world, we were also taught that at that place where human beings left off, an immaterial world kept on going. The next things after humans in the order of complexity were immaterial, non-carbon-based life forms. There's a next order of beings, persons who are spirit beings, but who don't have corporeal, fleshy bodies, but who share with us intellect, will, personhood, humor, and love. They're called the angels. Then if you want to get really deep into angelology, there are choirs and ranks, there are thrones and dominions and all these different ranks of angels. I never really understood all of it. It's just that I was never that interested, to tell you the truth. There are books on that. You can find them without having to search very hard. But I was interested in the concept of a guardian angel because I was told that I had one. Again, back to my mom and being put to sleep at night. I can remember the bed I slept in when I was 4 years old. There was this print of a big winged angel with huge wings and a flowing gown. It was hovering above a couple of children, a boy and a girl, out for a walk, barefoot, walking on this rickety bridge over a stream. It was to depict an obviously dangerous scene where innocent children might tumble into a creek and be swept away. But this angel was over them as an invisible presence, caring for them, trying to keep them safe. Anyway, I grew up with that icon above my bed, and I was taught that I had a guardian angel. Have you ever heard this prayer? Angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love commits me here, ever this day be at my side, to light, to guard, to rule, to guide. Well, it's a rhyme, and it's easily memorized. I memorized it probably when I was 5 or 6, and I'm remembering it at 63 without any effort. I've grown up with the idea of my guardian angel not being a mythical something taught to amuse children. It's not a leprechaun, for example. I was taught that, no, my angel is real. It's not a make-believe creature. It's not a unicorn. It's a real being who's always with me, who came here with me, whose job it is to love me as God's servant. My guardian is always at my service to elevate me and to protect me from those things from which it's possible to be protected. Can you remember when you learned that one day you would die? Do you remember? Did you ever see maybe a dead bird on a sidewalk? Or did you have a pet, a dog or a cat that died? Or a loved one, perhaps a grandparent or somebody close to you who died? I remember knowing pretty early on that I was the kind of being that would live in this body. My body would change, it would get older, and lots of times you wanted it to because older kids got to do things that you couldn't do because you were too little. You couldn't run as fast, or you couldn't go on that ride at the amusement park or something like that. As a child, you kind of want to get older, and you know there's going to be a version of you later that's going to be bigger. I can remember being in our grade school in the first grade and asking to go to use the restroom. On my way down the hall, I had to pass by the third grade class. The door was open. I glanced in, and I just got into this weird little out-of-body space. As I walked by, I had this panicky thought. Oh my God, they're bigger, they're older, they're smarter, and one day people are going to expect me to be that. I went to the restroom. On my way back to my classroom, I peeked in there again. And I continued to have this little existential panic. Oh my God, I'm going to be expected to be something that I'm not. I remember hearing a voice inside saying something like, "But by then you'll be ready. By then you'll be ready." It was a calming voice. I believe it was my guardian who was just saying, "Don't worry, you're doing just fine. You'll turn into what you need to be later. But for right now, you're fine. When you get there, you'll be ready." Anyway, that's an early experience that I still believe at 63 was my guardian angel. It was a voice inside my head that wasn't my own cognition. It was inside my imagination, but it didn't originate there, if you can understand that. I believe that all of us have a guardian angel. A guardian angel is not a relative of yours who died and loved you. Sometimes I'll hear people say, "Oh, well, my grandma is my guardian angel." Or sometimes at the death of a child, people will console themselves with a phrase like, "Oh, now we have another little angel in heaven." Well, that's metaphoric speech, but it would be imprecise, at least in a Catholic cosmology. When we die, we're not going to become angels. When we die, we're not going to become elephants. We're always going to be human. At least that's the way that my tribe understand things, and that's what I'm passing on to you because it's what I've got. Back to the angels. They're here to guard us, and they're more powerful than we are. They're smarter than we are. They're more loving than we are. Even though their job is to protect us, they still have to allow for human freedom. You can ask for your guardian to protect you from all that it's possible that you'd be spared, but I knew very early on not to pray that I would never have a bad day. I knew that my body would eventually die of something. We pray for people's health all the time. I'm at church a lot. We hardly ever have a public prayer in which we don't mention somebody who's ill. We're hoping for a return to health. But we also know that there's going to come a point at which that prayer for health is not going to be answered by an aging body becoming youthful all over again or something. Somebody recovering from something that looks like their final illness. The guardians can't protect us from everything, but they can do a great deal. I got in the habit of praying to my guardian at the end of the night, and I'm going to go into that a little bit in the next little part of this conversation.